big video for you guys today. We literally have Liberal and NDP politicians running scared from growing security concerns from Canadians. I wonder why your constituents are so mad. Let's dig into some of that stuff. And then we also have an update on the Airbnb changes that seem to be sweeping the nation. This has a lot to do with our major housing crisis in Canada. I think there might be some positive improvement from that, but there's some other stuff I want to talk about with that video as well, because it is some major changes that we're going to see. And then we have Chrystia Freeland, one of the most annoying people on camera ever, having a back and forth in the House, playing some serious politics in the most annoying way. She's doing classic Liberal technique. We're seeing some frustration from her, people in the House, us as Canadians as we're watching it. It's definitely worth paying attention to because they play these little tricks and we need to be aware of it. So let's dive into today's video and see what's been happening.
So the housing crisis has every level of government trying to find homes for those who don't have them. Newfoundland and Labrador, the latest province to tighten rules and bring in new regulations, forcing unlicensed accommodations like Airbnb to register. CTV's Garrett Berry has more.
A warm, sunny day might make you think it's almost summer in St. John's. Tourism season is just around the corner.
We had to figure out as an industry, how do we put our arms around this whole new type of accommodation.
New rules made official last week in Newfoundland and Labrador's House of Assembly give owners of short-term rentals like Airbnbs until the end of next month to register with the provincial government. The head of the Provincial Hospitality Association
I'm more concerned about how close that car was to that old man.
says short-term rental operators will now have to follow the same rules as bigger players about insurance and fire safety.
Airbnb shouldn't be banned entirely because, I'm a bit of a free market guy, so I do want property rights. So that's where I struggle. At the same time, I've seen absolute junk Airbnb owners who are operating unsafe units. They're running it like slums. It's horrible for the neighborhoods. So I understand the counter argument where it should be banned because it also should be freeing up more units. And in this instance, if you do put in more regulations, but allow people to use it and say, hey, you want to do it? Treat yourself like a hotel. More units should hit the market, which means ideally more places for the average person to do long-term rentals, not worry about Airbnb.
Suddenly, you don't meet egress windows and you have to face the prospect of putting in 4 or 5 egress windows in your basement apartment. You might say, no, that's not really for me.
But across the country in British Columbia, short-term rental owners are facing a big crackdown. Starting this month in bigger municipalities like Vancouver and Victoria, people will be banned from owning properties solely to rent them out on sites like Airbnb and VRBO. That ban has put one rental manager out of business.
They were doing the business above board, and it was sanctioned in these areas. It's really taking away their property rights as they knew them and as they purchased these homes.
A similar debate in Ontario's cottage country. The township of Muskoka Lakes is debating rules that would force short-term rentals to register, get up to code, and have a manager that can be on site with an hour's notice. The mayor says a few rowdy visitors have become a big problem.
They come in.
Yeah, and again, this is happening all across the country. We're seeing it in almost every single province. There's some sort of Airbnb regulation being entered. I think there should be, because I don't think this should just be a complete free-for-all, letting people do whatever they want, especially if they're not up to code.
And they're making noise, they're partying excessively, music, fireworks, they're defying fire bans.
To be fair, a lot of these rentals that people talk about, it's not just partiers. There are people who is their house burned down. They need an insurance claim. They need somewhere to stay close to the school district where they can cook. And people don't want to live at a hotel for 8 months or 12 months. So I kind of get it. I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. I do work all the way across the country. Reach out to me in my link below. I can hand select somebody for your neighborhood. Before we get into this next video, this video is hilarious. I was kind of laughing at hearing the politicians being nervous and how scared they were and these things. So we'll get into it. This is about the security concerns that they're experiencing as politicians. Maybe some self-reflecting required by them.
Axe the tax and spike the hike.
It's the latest political tactic by the Conservatives to push back on the carbon tax.
Axe the tax!
Protests at Liberal and NDP constituency offices, organized by Conservative members, part of a deliberate strategy.
We are going to start a massive pressure campaign in Parliament, but you need to back me up on the ground. How many will organize protests out of Liberal constituency offices to pressure them to do the right thing?
But the latest round of protests raising concerns from the sergeant-at-arms, the official in charge of keeping parliamentarians safe. Global News obtained an email sent to all 338 MPs saying they should have a locked door policy at their constituency office. If an appointment with a constituent is necessary, members or their employees should consider virtual meetings for the foreseeable future.
Well, politicians, if you have a tax that is in place that has people angry enough where you feel unsafe from their levels of anger, maybe take a moment to wonder, are you doing the right thing? That being said, no violence. Don't do it. It's not worth it. I do think it's hilarious, though, that these guys are going, don't even meet with your constituents. It's too scary. Just take a Zoom call with them. You can't meet with them in person. You're not doing your job as a politician if you can't meet with your constituents. These are the people you represent. You can't meet with your constituents. Come on.
If they need help with immigration issues, if they need help with, their taxes or any of those services that my team provide to our constituents, they won't be able to access those tomorrow.
I have a
Don't go to your local politician for tax advice.
panic button that I take around with me.
That's Toronto area Liberal Pam Damoff, the latest MP to decide not to run in the next election due to the political.
She has a panic button. You're doing something wrong. If you feel like you need a panic button, you're doing something wrong.
Political climate.
The tone in Parliament and the toxicity out there is it's just not something I want to be part of anymore.
But it's not just Conservative tactics.
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite is showing us exactly what shameful, spineless leadership looks like.
How come he's allowed to say stuff like that?
He seems to want to burn everything down. It's a pyromaniac Polyev.
Members of all parties routinely use unparliamentary language inside and outside of the House of Commons.
I think all members of Parliament should do well to live by the norms of decency and civility and democracy.
To help facilitate additional security, the House of Commons will pay for the RCMP or local police to protect MPs, according to La Presse, to deal with an increasingly polarized political climate.
So what does that mean? It means they're so bad at their jobs that they feel people are angry enough at them that they need to hide in their office, don't talk to constituents. They're also going to be now increasing tax spending. Thanks, guys, because all of the RCMP stuff, all of this extra security, that's usually overtime, which means they're way overpaying for this. Again, guys, remain peaceful. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. That being said, getting into this next video, very frustrating. So annoying to hear Freeland. Pierre is making a great point. He's talking about the problem that's happening. The Liberal Party has the option to hit the kill switch on something like they do on immigration, like they do on the carbon tax, and they're just pushing responsibility away from themselves. Let's get into it.
It has now been 10 days and 60 dead British Columbians since the government of that province has asked the Prime Minister to reverse his deadly and radical legalization of crack, heroin, and other hard drugs in children's parks, hospitals, on transit. Why will he not reverse his radical agenda?
Communities in BC are facing an extremely serious challenge. It is a toxic drug supply on the streets and people are dying. We know that public consumption is an issue of concern, which is exactly why, Mr. Speaker, BC is amending their proposal, and we have been working with them every step of the way. We're treating this with the urgency it deserves.
They literally said we need to stop it. So their amendment is, please stop it.
And all partners are at the table right now, Mr. Speaker, to find the path forward, working with law enforcement and health services so that we get this right and save lives, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, to find a path forward, the path forward is obvious. Ban hard drugs, invest in treatment, bring our loved ones home drug-free. That minister claimed last week that she was waiting for the BC government to provide information before she could decide on reversing radical legalization. It turns out the government had given her that information within hours of the request. She has all the information, so why are her and her radical boss clinging on to this insane policy.
So this is something that I like to point out. When you give them an inch, they will take a mile. You cannot allow them any. This is why I was so hesitant about the Airbnb stuff earlier on, is because once you give them some level of regulatory power, some power over decision, like they're going to hold on to that and they're not going to let go. So it's like you watch the Liberals do that often. I mean, most parties do, to be honest, it's a government thing, but you just, the less power, the better.
Inside of the House, we follow science, we follow healthcare experts, and we follow the information. We are working with BC on a comprehensive
We all know who the experts are.
amendment to their proposal. This takes collaborative work, Mr. Speaker, to get it right. This is a health issue, Mr. Speaker, not a criminal one. The Leader of the Opposition is misleading Canadians in not recognizing that people need health care. They do not need to be re-stigmatized and criminalized.
The Abbotsford
If you're breaking the law, you kind of do need to be criminalized.
Soccer Association wrote a letter entitled A Cry for Change. Volunteers with the organization have found dirty needles that can puncture innocent children in the playing field. Other BC fields have had women raped and overdose, have found addicts naked, have had pets actually overdose because there's so much drug contamination on the site. What are they thinking over there?
Mr. Speaker.
Before she gets into it, because it's very frustrating, I lived in Vancouver, a few years ago before it was even as bad as it is now. And, when you went down East Hastings, it was like zombies walking around. It was crazy. And it's even worse now. And now it's making it into public fields. It's crazy that the BC government and everybody's just letting it happen and they just catch and release everybody.
A pilot project was put in place at BC's request. BC now has serious concerns about some aspects of that. We share those concerns and we are addressing them. But I do want to say, Mr. Speaker, I do not think there is a family in Canada that is untouched by the tragedy of opioids. And I think that it is absolutely abhorrent to try to score political points off the pain of Canadians.
That is the issue that I have with Liberal talking points. They always do that. No, we're recognizing that there's a real legitimate problem where people are dying, Canadians are being affected, Canada is being negatively impacted on the global scale because of these things, and you're trying to say he's trying to score political points? No, he's bringing up a real issue. I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or anybody in my team all the way across Canada. We can hand select somebody for your area. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.